hand me one of your emoji waves if your audio is working on your end. We're sure glad you're here today. I see there's people from all over the province. Glad you could join us. I'm coming to you from Selkirk, Manitoba, where it's nice and overcast, and I wonder where you all are from. So if a couple of you wouldn't mind just popping into the chat, what area you're from. Clouds are over in Stonewall too, I see. Yeah, definitely feels like there's no sun today. And we got some southern Manitoba and western Manitoba and the good old Gimli. Oh, it's so great to have you all. Thank you for those of you who are willing to share where you're from. I just love that. It's so cool that we can be connected in this way. Thanks for joining us on Personal Presentation. How about with an emoji? Shoot me a thumbs up if you're glad you're not on video today for this session. Would you want your computer camera on, or are you glad you're not on? It's kind of funny because it's all about personal presentation, and man, hasn't the world changed with the whole Zoom thing? We have to be ready all the time now. So today we want to look a little bit at dress codes and what kind of impressions and images that our presentation conveys in the workplace and what we would want it to, and then also take a look at it from the employer's point of view. Now, before we jump into that, we just want to understand who we are. We're Workplace Education Manitoba. We focus on the 9 essential skills that help bring success in work, in learning, and in life. This is a slide of what the 9 essential skills really are, and you'll notice that our workshops cover the whole range of them. So a lot of our topics vary, and yet they would funnel into supporting one of these 9 skills to give you success in your workplace. This is where I'm coming to you live from. We have a Workplace Education and Skills Training Center in Selkirk, Manitoba, called the Interlake West Center. But we also have them all over the province, so almost guaranteed, no matter where you are, there's one that's not terribly far from you. And this is just a little idea of those West centers scattered across the province. So there you can do, one-on-one classroom stuff to just beef up your skills, or you can join in workshops and different corporate training also, where we leave our West centers and we come to your workplace and work on training plans customized to your needs. And to do all this, we get funded. So we have multiple levels of government funding us, and Employment and Social Development Canada and Manitoba Education and Training funded the curriculum development, and then Human Resources Skills Development Canada and Entrepreneurship Training and Trade. We want to thank them for their ongoing support so that workers like you and I out there in the Manitoban workforce have supports and training and professional development all along the way. Of course, we do have to point out our website. You can visit wem.mb.ca, and then I'll also pop into the chat here because I'm coming to you from Interlake. You could certainly visit our own website, which is a subpage of the one I just mentioned, and that would show you what we've just released for fall. So for September, October, November, we have some things happening in different areas and online, so please join us for that. So we want to dive right in and take a look at why this matters. And some statistics show that up to 60% of people hiring you, so in that interview process, dropping off the resume process, the meet and greet process, 60% of those you will contact will judge you based on your presentation. And yet 90% of the population doesn't actually understand what dress codes apply to which situations. And in fact, depending on where you're coming from, some just don't even value or appreciate why they're there. And so really personal presentation, it's about how you're portraying yourself, how you're presenting who you are. And so the way you look, the things you say, and what you do, it's really like a marketing package. You're really marketing who you are. And you have a place of influence. There's stuff that you know that I don't know. There's experiences you've had that I haven't had. And there's a breadth and a depth of learning that you've done over your lifetime. And in some ways, it's kind of sad that some of that is hidden by that first impression that you make, right? Because you just have this wealth of knowledge and experience, and yet that first personal presentation piece is sometimes what opens up the door in order to be able to showcase your talents and your knowledge. Now, if we're thinking about how presentation matters, it's really mattering in the sense of you're having a conversation, you're communicating, you are sending out signals for the situation and the people that you're meeting. And this can sometimes even reflect your own character. Some research on dress codes and people's appearances. It's said that there's this subconscious thing that happens when someone's wearing a watch that I don't think about it consciously, but the research says that you would observe people who wear a watch and you would make a judgment towards them that they're probably punctual or they're probably mindful and respectful. So isn't that interesting that some of those first impressions might be functional, right? Like shoes fit for the job or wearing a watch, and yet they reflect some of your character and your own personal values. So I want you to brainstorm for me for a second here. Using the chat, why don't a few of you tell me a career where you judge the person's competency based on how they're dressed? Give me some ideas where what the person's wearing matters to you. It might be your own industry. It might be you as a customer. When you go to a place, you judge that presentation. Receptionist, absolutely. Yes. Doctor, those first impressions of dreads and tattoos, yeah, people notice and research supports that. Waiter, waitress, yeah, isn't that interesting? Because you don't want the server at a restaurant unkept, right? Like you wouldn't really trust the food at that point. So absolutely, there's so many careers, and those in the airlines too. Imagine if you saw your pilot get on the aircraft and his uniform was all tattered and he looked absolutely worn out. How would you feel about the safety of that aircraft? Probably not great, right? So we do day to day continually judge people's credibility based on their presentation. And you're absolutely right. You touched on some really, really key ones where it happens all the time. And it's interesting because let's look at the far left image, say the one of the physician. In that case, we're expecting them to be clean. We certainly don't want to meet with the physician whose scrubs are covered with blood when it's our turn to meet them if they've just come out of surgery or whatnot. We want to know that it's sanitary when we encounter them. And the other presentation skills at work aren't just what they're wearing. And that's what I want us to catch in this whole thing, that it's not just about what you wear or how you're groomed, but those things add the credibility to all those other layers you're going to bring to the table too. So you do expect your doctor to be articulate. If there's a complaint I've heard about a doctor I used to share with someone, we actually couldn't understand them because they spoke so incredibly quietly that you could never hear and understand what they were telling you. So we do demand that presentation skills fit the career. And of course that they show respect and they're quiet and discreet with your information. You don't hear a lot of doctors screaming out information in the halls so that everyone gets to hear everything, right? And if we move into food industry and think about what do we expect there too, I just had a story. This lady just told me this story like 2 weeks ago. She went to this place where she heard they have such great home cooking. So she thought, I'm finally going to try it out. Everyone keeps telling me about it. So she went there. She was eating this delicious meal, which she loved. And partway through the meal, the chef came out to see how the food was. And the chef was so poorly put together, dirty, smelled. She thought, do they ever wash their chef's coat? That as she was eating her meal, she lost her appetite. Because the whole management on what they've done with their hair, their fingernails, and whether or not they appear to have any kind of confidence in the workplace suddenly affected how she felt about what she was eating. And then interestingly enough, when we think of finances, think about a financial planner. We're not expecting a financial planner to show up in yoga pants and, a ripped t-shirt. We're expecting a financial planner to look like they have it together and they're helping us get into a direction of confidence. And we also look to them for some communication skills. I have the word warm on there, and there's lots of other adjectives that cover that, but this is one of my favorites for personality. I feel like often we expect warmth from someone. We want them to extend to us a comfort and a rapport where they invite us into a conversation. And there's some professions where how you present yourself undergirds that message of warmth, like you're welcome here, I can help you, you have a place at the table. Now, one thing about our Tuesday tidbits is they're really just skimming the surface. We don't go super, super deep with them because we don't have enough time in the 30 minutes. But this gives you a picture of how much more you could do. And we offer further training on this too. And we can even customize this for your workplace to work with your dress code and so on. And we could be that third-party voice to come in and talk with employees about the power of personal presentation. So we would go a little deeper, talk about how self-esteem and self-confidence come into play, verbal communication, non-verbal communication. I love talking to that, right, Carrie? Can I get a witness from you? And taking that really deep in terms of all of the body language and facial expressions. But today we're gonna just bounce around this last one here on personal appearance and how it does matter because it is how other people are seeing you. Now, before we just get totally into that, I do want to touch on this because I find I often hear more so from a certain age group that they can't seem to get their head around why personal presentation matters, and they feel like it shouldn't matter. You should just accept me for how I am. But it's interesting because there's a lot of research that supports that the better you feel about yourself, the better you present yourself. And we're not talking about every minute of every day, right? When I'm gardening in my yard, I am wearing clothing fit for the task and my hands are dirty because that's what I'm working on. But the research does show that how someone feels about themselves and the confidence they have in knowing that they're improving and overcoming some of their flaws and leading them into self-growth actually affects how they wear and the kind of image they project. So they're actually giving off a piece of presentation that couldn't be covered just in the clothes they wear alone. And it's just a cool cycle. I'd love us to get into this deeper. We'll save that for some other time, but it's just a cool cycle because as you recognize, hey, I have some strengths, I have some weaknesses, and here's what I want to grow in. As soon as you start growing in that, it brings you back to that place of strength. So it's sort of like, you've heard of a vicious cycle. This is sort of like a super awesome cycle where the dividends are really, really great. So talking just about the personal appearance aspect and what you're projecting, our why has to matter. Why does it matter? And there is research to support that production and performance is affected by appearance. Believe it or not, what you're wearing, how you dress for the task can influence how productive you are in the task. And it's often why uniforms are at play in a workplace, because the uniform would be designed to support the type of work, and particularly if it's an honoring or flattering uniform, people feel really proud to be able to represent that profession. So often we want to demand respect. We wish people would respect us or take us seriously. And the first step is really to look respectable. And I have no way of knowing how old any of you are. But if any of you are really young or you're just getting connected to the workplace, this is one thing I hear from younger workers, that they just want the respect. And yet older workers have enough years behind them to say the first step of that is to present yourself in a way that shows you thought about coming to work today. And so often it's not really that you're dressing to even impress, it's you're showing I've put effort into my personal presentation because I've thought about where I'm going to work today. And mentally, I have prepared for this before I arrived at my cubicle or at my store or my environment. We want to ask ourselves, what is the job we actually have? And how do we adapt our presentation for that? And maybe you're not connected with the job right now. I know that's a very real concern in this era we find ourselves in. And so maybe your job is the job of finding a job. Regardless of where you're at, do take some time after we get off of our webinar today to just evaluate, what is the one I actually have? And then, what's the one I want? Have you ever heard them say, don't dress for the job you have, dress for the job you want? Shoot me an emoji if you've heard that phrase. I love that phrase because that's not just dressing for a promotion. In some cases, that's dressing even for a change in career, right? That you're starting to get your head into the game of whatever's next for you. So is what you're wearing and how you're presenting yourself, do you feel like that's a good representation of your brand? And whatever your brand is that you're putting out there, does it match your aspirations? So maybe you're in a, I gave the illustration of gardening, right? When I'm in my garden, I'm wearing my mucky boots, I'm wearing my mucky clothes and my gardening gloves, and I don't look like I'm ready for the office. But what if gardening was my job? I would still have to look like that, right? I'd have to be dressed for that task. But would I come to work maybe clean or present in the way I'm talking and working and my posture? Would I be mindful of that so that whatever's next for me in that workplace is something I could attain? And then the last one could be tough. Do you have anyone you could trust that you could actually ask? Could you say to them, hey, what do you think? Like, where am I at? Am I stuck in a rut? I've been in this forever, and I know realtors actually ask this question. A lot of realtors really think about what it is they're wearing, and they might get stuck in an era and then have to modernize their wardrobe to match how modern houses have become. So feel free to ask someone you trust for some input on whether you're projecting correctly or not. And then think a little broader here beyond your personal brand to what's the brand of the company that employed you. I had a friend who used to work for Foot Locker. And so when they worked for Foot Locker, is that even a thing? I don't even know if Foot Locker is a store anymore. Somebody tell me if it's still a store. But they worked for Foot Locker, which is mostly sporting gear. And while they were there, what mattered was footwear. So they had to come with a cool pair of runners, and they had to be absolutely pristine, laces new, the shoes looking great, because the brand that they worked for was all about footwear, I guess, as evidenced by the name Foot Locker. So think about your brand of whoever hired you. To them, is safety most important? So are they ones where you should be walking around with a hard hat every chance you get? And that would be a part of your presentation. To them, is hospitality their main brand? And so wearing the smile and wearing the right body language would really matter. So think, in my company that I work for, they project a brand in their advertising and in their documentation. What is their brand? Because maybe they haven't even spelled it out for me in a dress code, and I need to interpret a little bit to determine that I'm rightly representing their brand. There's this thing called thin slicing. Has anyone heard of thin slicing? We're not just talking about lunch meat in the deli. But thin slicing is a thing your brain does where your brain makes millisecond judgments, and it does it subconsciously. But when it's stimulated with something new or presented with something new, it just does these millisecond judgments about how it feels, and it creates or erodes trust with the subject. And that happens in person with people. So knowing, hey, what does my company actually require? I should read that. Everyone reads it, the day they get hired, but do you ever revisit it Does your company have a set of rules? Do they have a set of requirements? And has it been updated through the years? Maybe you're the longest serving employee. Well, have you read the latest one? Because are you secretly sitting there mad at everyone that they don't dress like you, but really the dress code changed? In a study not too long ago, it revealed that actually 90% of employees don't understand the dress code in their own workplace. So don't underestimate this one. And there's sometimes the written dress code, and then there's sometimes the perception dress code, right? So written, they have to rate the bare minimum, but then take a look around. Who is it that just dresses up a bit more? Who is it, when you're at McDonald's, you can tell who the manager is because they have the different colored shirt. So in these workplaces, who's the one who shows up late maybe all the time, and you can hear them in their flip-flops going up and down the hallway? What are all these places where people are projecting certain perceptions and certain dress code policies that aren't even written down? So give yourself some time to take a look at that also. Just a quick overview. A lot of places use the phrase smart casual, and that's really like saying you're dress casual, but you just need a little degree of polish on top of that. Business casual would be slightly more formal than that, so maybe sports coat with khakis, or throwing a suit jacket on over top of sundress. And then there's the business formal. So this is become more and more rare in our day and age, but the suits, the power suit, the business formal. And then you'll get that email. It'll come where it says, hey, we're having a company party, come festive, or come for theme day, or come for casual day. And don't make the mistake I made in one of my first serious office jobs. They told me it was casual day, like my first week of work. And I completely dressed down. I wore like this baggy sweatshirt and sweatpants. And then I showed up on casual day and discovered that's not really what they meant for casual day. It was such an awkward day. Anybody feel my pain? So maybe dress up a little bit on that first casual day that comes by and just take a look around at what everyone else wears. So to get a picture of the kinds of places that usually employ these, it helps us understand the dress codes a little better when we can see that really if you're working in a retail environment or selling sort of low value sales goods, you usually need the smart casual, right? You're casual, but you just dressed it up to a degree, slightly more dressy than your customer, basically. Business casual would be a step up from there, and we see that with realtors and different professions like that. And of course, formal we see in a lot of the legal professions, some medical, and so on. So this is a great picture of how people can interpret correctly and incorrectly what the dress code policies are. So this is from an actual workplace, and they put pictures out and they showed on the left that things are compliant with the dress code. And then they showed on the right, hey, you came close, but not quite. And they go through and they list, your jacket is not tailored, you're not wearing a tie. Hey, girl with the crop top, those aren't acceptable. Girl with the suit jacket, nice try, but we have a policy against blue jeans. So it's recognizing that those things, they are at play. And I have a pet peeve. Can I just share my pet peeve? My pet peeve is when people just forcibly try to rebel against the dress code. I just don't get it. I don't understand why they do it. It's probably a little bit arrogant to think that you know better than whoever wrote your dress code. And this has changed through the years. Like you can see the scale here of formal to casual and everything in between. And before the 1990s, more things were on the business formal side. And then in the 90s, a big recession hit and everything went way casual in the workplace. And it was funny because employers that changed to that noticed that they had a 40% boost or increase in productivity when they switched to casual. But by the mid 90s, they switched back. Sales were dropping and productivity was dropping. And so they switched back more so to the business casual and just general business wear. So by late 90s, it was being dressed up again. I can see casual is abounding right now in the pandemic. And so it'll be interesting, the research that comes out in the years ahead, how far will swing the pendulum all the way to the casual side, and will it swing back like it did in the workforce in the 90s? Now show me a thumbs up if you know somebody who's just got this figured out. Like, is there someone in your workplace where they show up for work and they look like the part? They look like they're ready for work. They look like they've thought about it. Is there someone like that? I noticed this recently. There's someone in our group today. I recognized your name. Yeah, we all can think of good examples, right? And I have one in our group today. I recognized your name. I came to your workplace. And what was so cool is I got to see the dress code in the office was pretty similar, except the manager was there and the manager dressed one step up from the other employees. So they added a little bit of jewelry and so on to their outfit. And it just showed, hey, they were ready for work. They came ready. I'm sure you know who you are. I hope you'll send me a private message, because I thought it was really cool that you got it. You were there as a leader in mind and in what you were wearing. So it's super cool to see people catch that. A lot of people complain and say, I can't afford a new outfit and it's supposed to be casual, but I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Well, wash your clothes, iron your clothes. If you don't have an iron, because nobody owns irons anymore, hang your outfit on a hanger and hang it in the bathroom. And when you have your hot shower, it'll steam out your clothes a little bit. But please iron your clothes. Sew them, make sure they're put together. Try to go a little more plain. You know, you don't have to wear the Hawaii 5-0 shirt. You can wear things that are a little less in your face. And of course, the best tip of all time is your shoes should be clean. So if you're going for a job interview or you need to make a good impression, please wash your shoes. Take some paper towel, wet it in the sink, and wipe down your shoes. I actually worked for an executive who this was his make it or break it hiring thing. So when the person was waiting to be interviewed, he took a look at their shoes, not even their outfit, because he knew their outfit was probably borrowed, but their shoes they probably owned, and their shoes would say how much care they had put into the moment of coming for the interview. So please give your shoes a little wipe. I'm not going to say I'm a Coco Chanel fan, but of course she has a famous fashion and perfume empire. And I love this, that dress can actually distract from the memory of who you are, or you could just be impeccable and remember who you actually are, not what you were wearing. So what image works for the organization that you represent? And maybe not just the organization, but maybe the actual event. So are you doing something on their behalf? Is your company hosting something? Or do you work in a certain division that needs to project an image? Employers tend to leave this part up to us to figure that out, and there's not usually a written code on that part. And in job performance reviews, don't you love the phrase, if it's about you, that this employee meets or exceeds expectations? Well, this involves grooming, hygiene, come to work clean, smelling okay. And one supervisor I worked for, she kept a toothbrush and toothpaste in her top drawer. And every day after lunch, she went and brushed her teeth, because no matter who she met in the morning or the afternoon, she wanted to make sure they had a great impression. So thinking about the whole hygiene education, one of the phrases you might see is an appearance policy. Your company may have that as it relates to perfume, less is more. And the old kids song. Do you know this kids song? Head and shoulders, knees and toes, eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. Those are the things to consider when you're thinking about grooming and getting ready for the workplace. This is a cool phrase, again, by a fashion mogul, go figure, that really grooming is the secret of elegance. It's not really about having the right clothes, because you could wear the absolute best clothes and they will look like rubbish if you didn't have a shower or comb your hair. So don't force other people into that awkward conversation, including modesty. And recognize, a lot of people just throw in the towel and won't try on personal presentation because they feel like there's someone in the office who beats them at that. They're just better at that. Well, you're not in a contest with them. You're in a contest with you. You're trying to figure out, who am I? What's my brand? Do I bring value to the table? And can I just meet the bare minimum of what my employer asked of me? Or can I be and engage in perception so that I can exceed expectations for my employer and for the customer? And we don't have time to go into all the nonverbal, but I had to force this one in because I believe in this one so strongly, that your countenance actually can make people feel comfortable or uncomfortable. So I would say, above all else, put on the smile and think about the face and what you're projecting in your presentation, because your face could also totally undermine the presentation that you put some work into. This brings us to the end of our tidbit. I want to thank you for participating. I know that people who sign up for these tidbits really want to grow in their careers and really want to add that extra edge and add that value to what you bring to the table. And so I just want to applaud you on the back and let you know we're here for you. So not only do we have those extra workshops coming up all through this fall, but we also have opportunities to come to you. So maybe you want to have grooming and presentation conversations with your team. We can do that for you and take the awkward away and tell people to wear deodorant. We can help with that. And then, of course, communication and how we can just leverage that in our workplaces. I wish you all just an incredible day. Go out, be awesome, like Carrie always says, and we'll see you again real soon. Take care.